Hello class. So the main idea behind neoclassical microeconomics, which is a foundation for neoclassical macroeconomics, is this idea of resource scarcity. Now, we're not talking about absolute resource scarcity, although that falls in there too, but what we're most concerned about is resource scarcity relative to unlimited human wants. So, since we want the world, well, there's only a certain amount of resources available to satisfy those wants, and therefore they're scarce. So, when we invoke this notion of scarcity, we come across this idea of opportunity cost. So, opportunity cost here is the value of what could have been produced if our resources were used in the best alternative manner. So, to demonstrate this idea of opportunity cost, we always begin with the production possibilities model. So, in the production possibilities model, we assume we have two goods. And it could be any goods, but here I'm assuming our goods are guns and butter. And the reason why economists like to use this idea of guns and butter is because we like to talk about guns as if they were industrial goods, and butter as if they were agricultural goods. So, therefore, if we talk about industrial goods and agricultural goods, we pretty much are talking about the entire economy. So here are two goods, guns and butter, simplistic but relevant. And then we have to say that we have, if we're going to talk about production possibilities, how much is possible for society to produce, we need to hold some things constant. So here we're going to hold constant the amount of available resources, land, the available amount of labor we're going to hold constant, and the amount of capital goods we're going to hold constant, and we have to hold constant our state of technology, meaning no technological innovation. So given a constant amount of labor, land, capital goods, and technology, and given a finite time period, here we're just going to assume 1 year, the question then is, given these resources, how much is it possible for society to produce? So, quick review here on graphing. So with graphing we have two axes here. So we have x-axis and y-axis, right? So y-axis is vertical, x-axis is horizontal, and the x-axis is always first, then the y-axis, so it's always across up, alright? Regular graphing. If we're going to talk about how much is possible for society to produce, we need to start with the production possibility schedule. The production possibility schedule tells us that if all of our resources are fully employed and all of our capital is fully utilized and both labor and capital are utilized efficiently, there is a certain quantity of guns and a certain quantity of butter that is absolutely possible for society to produce, and we can't go beyond that. So, if society chose to only make butter, we wouldn't be making 80 tubs of butter. And then if society only made butter, then obviously we'd be making no guns. Now, if society only made guns, now we're down here, we could make 50 guns. And if we're only making guns, of course, then we're not making any butter, and we have 0 tubs of butter. If resources were just as efficient in making guns as they were in making butter, we'd have a notion of constant opportunity cost, meaning we need to give up the same amount of guns to get the same amount of butter each time. So, to graph this then, that turns out to be a straight line curve with a constant slope, meaning I give up the same quantity of guns to get the same quantity of butter. If I want to get more butter, I got to give up the same number of guns, so on and so forth. Right? It's a constant slope. So a straight line production possibilities curve indicates constant opportunity cost, or we also denote as constant returns. This implies that both resources are suitable in both industries, i.e. cows are just as good as making butter as they are as making guns, and machine tools are just as good as making butter as they are as making guns. However, this is not the normal production possibilities curve between two industries. Okay, this is a normal production possibility schedule. It tells us the amount of tubs of butter that we have to give up, if we read down here, to get 10 guns each time. So I give up butter, go from 80 tubs of butter to 0 tubs of butter, and then each time I get 10 more guns. So I start at 0 guns and I end up with 50 guns. So we can just read the schedule from top down. So to get 10 tubs of butter, I first have to give up what? 5 tubs of butter. I'm sorry, to get 10 guns, I give up 5 tubs of butter. Right? So I go from 0 guns to 10 guns, and then I lose 5 tubs of butter. Why? Because when we're up here, all of our resources are employed in the butter sector. We have 0 resources employed in the gun sector. So I need to shift resources over from butter to guns. Okay? So I shift labor over from the butter sector to the gun sector. I shift capital goods over from the butter sector to the gun sector. And since I'm shifting resources over, I must lose out on butter. And I do. I go from 80 tubs of butter to 75 tubs of butter, and I give up 5 tubs of butter here. Okay? What about getting the next 10 guns? Well, I go from 10 guns to 20 guns, so I gain 10 more guns. And how much butter do I give up? Well, now I'm at 75, and then I move down to 65, so looks like I give up 10 tubs of butter. What about the next 10 guns, right? I move from 20 guns to 30 guns, so I get 10 more guns here. And how much butter do I give up now? Well, I was at 65, now I'm at 50, so looks to me I give up 15 tubs of butter. What about getting the next 10 guns, moving from 30 to 40 guns? Well, again, I have to shift resources over from the butter sector to the gun sector, and I'm giving up more butter. And looks like I'm giving up 20 tubs of butter. And to get the last 10 guns, looks like I'm giving up 30 tubs of butter. So what do we notice here? We notice that I'm getting the same amount of guns each time. I'm getting 10 guns, 10 guns, 10, 10, 10. Right? But each time I'm losing more and more tubs of butter. Right? So I'm losing 5 here, cost me 10 here, cost me 15, 20, 30. This is the notion of increasing opportunity cost. Okay? As we move down the production possibility schedule, the opportunity cost of using our resources in the best alternative use is getting greater and greater and greater. Why? Because resources are always used in the most efficient manner. Okay? So I'm going to keep my most efficient resources in the butter sector, as much as I can, but as I keep on wanting to get more and more guns, then I'm moving resources that are more and more suitable to make butter over into guns, and then those resources are less suitable to make guns. Okay? Because of this assumption of maximum resource efficiency. Okay, so, like I just said, a bold out curve from the origin, diminishing returns and increasing opportunity cost. So the law of increasing opportunity cost states that in order to get more of any good in a given time period, we must sacrifice an ever-increasing amount of other goods, all else being equal. So, right, this is just what we saw here. We're at 40, 30, 30, 50, 20, 65, 10, 75. The change moving from this point to this point, or the cost of moving from here to here, is not the same as going from here to here, or the same as going from here to here. Okay? It's an increase in opportunity cost as we move down the curve there. Okay, let's add 2 additional points onto our schedule. Let's add 25 guns, 75 butter, 15 guns, and 40 butter. So 25 guns, 75 butter. That's right here. A point outside the curve, such as the one we just saw. Okay, if we measures in physical terms, numbers of guns with tubs of butter, given our resources and technology, a point outside the curve is physically impossible. Okay, means unattainable. Why? Because it's the production possibilities curve. Okay, the production possibilities curve states the amount it's possible for society to produce. We cannot produce any more, so a point outside the curve is unattainable. Now, if we're measuring it in terms of monetary or money terms, then it's absolutely possible to have a point outside the curve. That simply means that prices are going up. This is inflation. Okay, what about a point inside the curve? Well, a point outside the curve is physically impossible, but any point inside the curve here is possible. Okay? This is the amount it's absolutely possible for us to produce. It's feasible to produce anything less than that. However, it's not desirable. If we have a point inside the curve, that means we're under the amount it's possible for our economy to produce. We could produce more butter. We can produce more guns. We could produce more butter and guns. So it's absolutely possible. A point inside the curve is possible, but it's undesirable. Okay? That must mean that if we are not at our full potential, there must be unemployment and excess capacity. That just means capital equipment is not being utilized. Resources must be left unused and underutilized. This is inefficient and wasteful. So, a point on the curve, any point on the curve is possible. That means we're operating at full employment, full resource utilization, full productive capacity at the most efficient pace. When we're operating on the curve, resources are scarce, and because everything's fully employed and all capital is fully utilized. And the notion of opportunity cost is in effect. We cannot increase the production of one good, guns, without decreasing the production of another, butter. So, the question then becomes, what determines where the production possibilities curve is? Well, a production possibilities curve is drawn for a given state of technology and given availability of resources. Recall from one of our opening slides, we said that we're holding capital constant, the amount and availability of the labor supply constant, and we're holding the state of technology constant. Why? Because that assumption of constant labor, constant capital, constant technology allows us to draw a stable production possibilities curve. If the labor supply increases, it's possible for society to produce more. If our capital goods increases, it's possible for society to produce more. With technological advancement, it's possible for society to produce more. So, relaxing our assumptions causes the production possibilities curve to shift out. And what's the meaning of this? It means that there's economic growth. So, a shift out of the production possibilities curve is just like we see here. It's an outward shift. Okay? So, if there's an increase in the labor supply, an increase in our population, we can produce more with more people, so the curve will shift out. Okay? If there's a technological advancement that applies to both guns and butter, the curve will shift out. Okay? If there's a new discovery of land, or we take over some land, then the curve will shift out. If there's a new discovery of mineral deposits or copper deposits, the curve will shift out. So, a shift out of the production possibilities curve is economic growth. So, what is the source of economic growth? Well, increasing our resources, increasing capital, increasing labor, or technological advancement. Okay? And both technological advancement can be both process innovations, meaning we change the way we make things. An example of this is the assembly line, right? Just the assembly line increase the productive capacity of factories. And this could also be product innovations, such as the iPad, which I'm using right now to record this lecture, right? It allows me to record a lecture, and it allows me to put it up on D2L, and allows me to teach hundreds of students. So, a parallel shift out of the production possibilities curve means that these additional resources apply to both industries. However, this does not always have to be the case. Normally, when we talk about technological advancement, it doesn't apply to all industries. Usually, technological advancements apply to only specific industries, or what we call a sector-specific technological advancement, or a sector-specific resource expansion. Here, it changes the way we think of the shift of our production possibilities curve. We don't have an outward shift anymore. If we invented a new technology that only applies to the butter sector, well, it allows us to make additional butter. Like, let's say I invented a super duper butter churner, right? So with this awesome new butter churner, I can make so much more butter. Okay, so I move from, I think this was 80 tubs of butter, to now maybe this is, say, 110 tubs of butter, right? So if society is only producing butter, I can produce a heck of a lot more butter. However, I can also produce more combinations of guns and butter all along the curve. Why? Because if I have a new technology that only applies to the butter sector, then I can move resources over to the gun sector, and since I have that new capital equipment in the butter sector, I can still make a heck of a lot more butter with not as much labor. So I can move that labor over to the gun sector, and I can make more combinations of guns and butter. But what can't I do? I can't make any more guns. Okay? Why? Because my butter churner does not apply to the gun sector. It only applies to the butter sector. So I'm limited. I still have this upper limit with guns, but I can make more combinations of both because my butter churner allows me to utilize my resources, specifically labor, in alternative industries. And in this case, it's in the gun industry, which allows me to make more combinations, but not any more guns. So, what do we see with this sector-specific growth? more butter can be produced, but if all resources were applied to gun production, gun output would remain the same. But we could produce more guns than butter, like I just said. Okay, well, if the production possibilities curve can shift out, then it can shift in as well. A shift in of the production possibilities curve could be universal or sector specific. Okay, and this is the result from a decline in resources or a technological decline. Now, for example, a technological decline would usually we talk about technological innovation, right, or technological advancement. Well, a technological decline could be illegalizing certain technologies for environmental reasons or whatever. For example, we can't spray DDT on our produce agriculture anymore, even though it's very good at killing weeds. It's not good for us, so we outlawed it, right? So that would technological decline. It's when we outlaw technologies, which is a shift in the production possibilities curve. So don't get mixed up between a shift out of the production possibilities curve and a point outside the curve and a shift in of the production possibilities curve versus a point inside the curve. Okay? They're different. So, what are the sources of economic growth? Increasing of resources, meaning land. New land can be brought into cultivation or discovery of new deposits of natural resources, increased stock of renewable resources, and then if we talk about the production possibilities curve for any given country, then we could talk about conquering another country. Another source of economic growth is increasing the labor supply. This could be population growth, or it could be new sectors of the population entering the workforce. For example, when women entered the workforce in World War II, or now in the United States we have migration. So when you have immigration from one country to another country, that increases our labor supply. Another source of increase in economic growth is capital goods. Okay, so increase in our capital goods production. Another source then that we talked about, or have been talking about, is technological advancement. So we had the microelectronic revolution, technological innovations, organizational innovations, such as the assembly line, which I have pictured here. So economic decline then can be war, natural disasters, population decline, emigration, or outlawing technologies like I used before. This is my DDT example, right? We don't use DDT in agriculture anymore because it's not environmental and creates health problems. So we legalize it. And then obviously multitasking, as fun as multitasking is, we illegalize it. So you're not allowed to text and drive, for example, and you're certainly not allowed to watch a TV show on your iPod. So, unemployment and underemployment. This is a problem for both micro and macro economics. The macroeconomic problem of unemployment is that we are always below our potential possibilities curve, right? We're always below potential. We should be on the curve, but we're below it. From a microeconomic point of view, unemployment means lost profits, okay? They could have been making money, but they're not making money because they're not selling their goods. Why? Because people don't have money because they're unemployed. So, when resources are not unemployed, they're not scarce. So, the neoclassical conservative view of economics is only applicable when we're on the production possibilities curve. Okay? When we talk about scarcity of resources, then there's a trade-off. We must give up so much a good X to get some a good Y. There is no opportunity cost to employing unemployed resources. Okay, when resources are unemployed, more of any good can be produced without decreasing the production of the other good. So, when we're underneath the production possibilities curve, this is more of the liberal or radical approach to economic theory. Is more applicable there. So, when we're underneath the curve, right, we can make more butter, more guns, or more of both. Right? And there's no opportunity cost here. Okay? It's not costing us any guns when we're at point D to get to point E. Right? To make more butter. It's not costing us any butter if we want to make more guns, because any point under here is unemployment. People aren't making anything. We only have trade-off is when we're on the curve. Okay? So when we're at full employment, when we're at full capacity, then we have a trade-off. But anything below, no trade-off. So, like I said, there's different theories to describe different scenarios. There's the neoclassical theory, which is the premise of the conservative approach, and it's applicable when we're on the curve. And then there's the Keynesian theory, which applies when the economy is inside the curve, and this is the liberal or even radical approach. And when we're underneath the curve, this idea of opportunity cost is not in effect. Okay? Well, that's all I have on production possibilities curves and opportunity cost. So, thank you.